Hi, everybody. You're tuned in to Where Waters Meet, a podcast featuring discussions on fly fishing, art, all things outdoors with a conservation focus. All right, guys. It's Alex and Johnny.
Oh, hey, man.
Mars has got bite.
Johnny?
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, well, we're back.
Back again.
Back again here with some colorful things in front of us. Sipping some peppermint tea.
Yeah.
You got a toddy in your Yeti or just water?
Just water. Just water.
That's safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can trust you.
Usually it's just water.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're back. Here we are with Where Waters Meet podcast. And today is going to be a pretty cool episode. It is going to be all Alaska fishing oriented with John's expertise in relation to that. Because I have not been, and but it's pretty cool. Yeah, we're gonna dive down into that and what he does up there and the time that he spends there. We've talked a little bit about it. He's talked a little bit about it and touched on previous episodes. So you guys have probably gotten a small taste of what he does and what they do up there. But to start out, before the On the Vice episode, John was gonna kind of impart his.
How it started?
The
catalyst?
His beginnings. Yeah.
The catalyst. The catalyst happened, I believe it was in the springtime. I don't know, 2015-ish, maybe. Mm-hmm. You and I were fishing the Magalloway River here in Maine.
It was just above Abbott Brook, too, I think, wasn't it?
Just above Abbott Brook on the Magalloway. And there was this gentleman fishing, and he had caught this considerable size brook trout.
It was a nice one.
And he was all by himself. And I walked up as he was netting it, and I asked him, I said, would you like me to take a photo of that? And he was like, no, I'm all set. I got plenty of photos of big fish, which blew my mind at the time. I'm like, how can this guy not want a picture of this beautiful fish? Mm-hmm. And I mean, in Maine, it was a trophy-sized brook trout. It was a very large. It was 19 inches at least. And,
yeah, at least. Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to talk to this gentleman. And that's how it all started. It was a older guy, Bob Erickson, and we hit it off, and we started talking a lot. And he every year makes a trip up to Bristol Bay region. Mm-hmm. In Alaska, and he just fell in love with it, and he started telling me stories of it and stuff, and I kept in touch with Bob, and at the time, my stepdad, he was ailing, he had cancer, and one of his bucket list things to do was go to Alaska, and I started talking to Bob about it, about what putting a do-it-yourself trip would entail and stuff. And Bob gave me all the info and stuff. And I floated the idea to my stepdad at the time, not thinking that he would say yes, because he was never the type to really go too far, venture out of New England or the state of Maine for that matter. And when he came back with a friggin' right, I was like,
"Yes, Bob."
I'm like, oh, I gotta kick this idea into overtime.
Yeah,
and I really doubled down. I got with Bob. Bob hooked me up with all kinds of people in Alaska in the Bristol Bay region, and that's how it started. And from there, that was my first trip up into Bristol Bay.
Does Bob usually DIY his trips up there?
So I think he started in the beginning. He hired guides, and from there he transitioned to DIY, which is you have to know your stuff because the consequences are real up there.
Yeah,
and Bob definitely knows his stuff. I think this is going to be Bob's first year in a long, long time where he actually booked a trip with guides. He's actually going out with us on our last trip of the season, which will be great. And it'll be a good time, Bob, if you're watching.
That is cool. That's full circle right there. Holy
It
cow.
really is. I'm stoked. It's going to be the last trip of the season, and we have some really cool guests on that trip. And it happens to be our longest trip. It's like 10 days, and it may be extended out a little.
Is that going to be in August or September?
It'll go into September.
Yeah.
So like the first week of September.
Nice time.
It starts to get pretty cold by then. And from there, we're going to transition to
On the Vice.
And this isn't going to be a specific fly. This is actually going to be mostly about Bob Erickson's patterns. And he's got his own little store. You can find him on Facebook. It's Alaska Signature Flies. And he's the one that started getting me going. And like, this is like called the Megawatt. This was like the first iteration of it. Bob, this might be a sad looking one because I tied it. I'm sorry. It probably doesn't do yours justice, but this was like way back. And what's cool about Bob's flies is like how much time he's like, so this is the newest version of that fly. So he keeps experimenting, and like, he's not afraid of new products, and he loves it, and like, they're all tried and true tested in Bristol Bay. They catch coho, they catch trout, they catch just about every version of salmon. And I think I asked him to time like the classic Dalai Lama colors, which black and white. The trout seem a little more interested in the more subdued colors, so that one would be apt to catch a little more rainbowish. It'll also catch the coho and stuff, but not like the bright pinks and oranges and stuff like that. And this is also a version of that. This is a new style. He ties on Eric's hooks and shanks basically, and I think he calls this one the Bobby Wog. It's so cool to see what he comes up with.
Wait, say that name again.
The Bobby Wog. I think that's what it's called. I'm not exactly sure, but it's just so great. It's like he took like classic Alaska patterns and just like blew them away. And
this is really cool. I really like how this is tied on a jig shank. He's got a mono loop here at the end so that it doesn't foul with the tail. It's really neat.
Yeah. Like his flies go through a lot of iteration.
Yeah.
And like I said, he's not afraid of different products. Like this was one order. I was like, Bob, just tie me some stuff. And you just like see how different everything is in there. And he gets most of his stuff. He wanted me to give out a shout out to Spawn Fly Fish. It's a small store, local fly shop. I've ordered a bunch of stuff. Like when I tie up Bob's patterns, that's where I'll buy my stuff from them. And they've got their own, Spawn's got their own products too. Like see this bead? This like football style bead.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of like one of their signature beads.
Yeah.
It's neat. It works really good on those jiggy type style flies.
Yeah. And you guys are gonna get a close up of all of these flies, and we'll do a pan of the box so you guys can kind of see.
Yeah, he does everything. I got a lot of top water. Like you see, he was going crazy with like the polywog tails. He got a lot of the mouse patterns with polywog tails. The only thing he didn't do up there is like those poppers.
Where'd you get those?
I think I stole them out of another guide's box up there.
Thief.
Yeah, we're thieving. We were just messing around. I'm like, yeah, give me some poppers.
So like these flies here though, like what's your favorite go-to as far as when you're fishing these up there? Are you using a floating line? Are you using an intermediate, a sinking?
I like intermediate. to be honest. But bobs are like heavy enough so you can, like in a pinch, a floater with a slightly longer leader
Yep.
to get that up and down action. But I like intermediate. That being said, I fish. I bring all three lines. Like I'll bring a sinker up there. I'll bring an intermediate, and I'll bring a floater depending on
Right.
what I'm fishing. Like, I'm not going to throw a popper on an intermediate.
No.
Not if I'm really fast.
Do you use the sinking line more if you're like up at the lake for a little bit?
Exactly. So I bring the sinking line just for the first part of our trips. When I drop off, I'm at the lake, and I'll definitely use a sinking line on the drop offs up at the lake, and then it'll get put away for the rest of the trip. The rest of the trip will be like an intermediate for streamers.
And so like the just so everybody looking kind of knows, like the gurglers or all these colorful mice that you got here, like you're swinging those and stuff for rainbows, or what are you doing with those?
Not really swinging. I like
twitching,
titravating, whatever you
I like titravating better. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. Titravating topics today.
Yeah. So, man, so on the float, when we're floating, basically, rainbows.
Okay.
We'll probably get a little more into that as we go on. But yeah, up at the lake though, on the gurglers or any top water, lake trout.
Yeah.
We get top water lake trout, which is very cool.
That is cool.
I hate letting secrets out, but we also can top water sockeye under very specific conditions, which is very cool. And Bob's patterns work great on that.
Do you know what the water temp is when you're getting top water lake trout?
It never gets up above the 50s. I don't think it's always cold.
It just makes me wonder, can you catch a top water lake trout here?
I don't know. You want to know what my first?
I want to try.
I don't fish for lake trout.
No, yet. I know. Yeah.
And which is weird. I told you, I know. I showed you that slob of a lake trout. There's like the first lake trout I ever caught, and I could like barely hold on.
Oh yeah, big, those big chunky, just blubbery bellies like that hang over your hand.
I couldn't even get a decent photo of it because it was just all blobby.
They're surprisingly slimy too. Yeah, they're kind of slippery, but anyways, we should actually we ought to target some lake trout this spring.
Yeah,
or something different. Let's do it.
We will.
Top water.
Yeah. And like, so our whole company, Alaska Rainbow Adventures, I think all of like the main guides, I think we all buy stuff from Bob.
Really?
Yeah. And I know the company owner actually just got like a huge stash from Bob. I think
that's cool.
I think it's probably one of the reasons why Bob's coming with us.
You better plug his site again, just in case. Like
Alaskan Signature Flies.
There you go.
I don't think he has a website. I think you just find him on Facebook.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to put that in the description too, so that like anybody watching can find him easy. We'll have a link.
Yeah, there. if you're going any place in Alaska, especially in the Bristol Bay region, look him up. He has a window for when he ties flies, and it's basically in the winter time.
Yeah,
you get a hold of them and get your order in, and his turnaround time is usually pretty fast. But if you get him when he's all gearing up to go on our trips and stuff, he's like,
well, that's how it should be.
Yeah,
that's no tie time.
Yeah, and
Bob needs Bob time.
Yeah. Oh, another great thing about Bob is like you can always recognize Bob on the river because he's got this pair of old Sims waders. I don't know what they are, like G3s or something, but there's more aqua seal than Sims waders left. It's great. It's great. It's like those waders are probably like half as old as I am.
Resilient and resourceful.
Oh,
that's good. I like that.
looks like if you took a caulk gun and just filled it with like seam seal and just went. But it works, man. It works for him.
Popsicle stick.
Yeah.
You know?
And and Bob, thanks for all you've done for me. You've I don't know if you know it, but you've changed my life, literally. So
Yeah, that's awesome. We've talked about that a little bit in the past. Like that's what fly fishing does for like all of us, and that's why we're always hot on people getting into it, because it's like so many people you talk to have some amazing experience of somebody that they met or a conversation they had on the side of the river or a friendship that's developed, and it's I have a lot of them too, and it's awesome. It really is.
It really is.
I mean, so everybody knows. I mean, it's like John went from a concrete background, you know what I mean? And doing construction, and he does carpentry and has always done that aspect of things. And then he got into fly fishing, which we shared how that happened because Chris owed him $300 from a job they did together or something. And he bought him a fly rod, and then we're out fishing and he meets Bob on the side of the river. And now John spends like 2 or 3 months a year guiding up in Alaska.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a life-changing event right there where you're like, I spend like a quarter of the year.
Yeah. I wish it was more, but
you might not like it in the winter as much.
No. Actually, I am there pretty much peak time. It's just the best time to be there.
Yeah. But segueing out of the on the Vice, which I will keep these out because John's probably going to end up talking about some of them, further. But I think you ought to, share with everybody about Alaska Rainbow Adventures.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of how you got started there, what they do, and how people can find you. And we'll obviously give a link in the description as well, so people can find Alaska Rainbow Adventures. And but yeah, like how did it all happen?
It happened on that first trip when my your brother-in-law Chris and I and my stepdad floated the Good News River for the first time. We were at the lake and we weren't having much success, and we decided to get on the river. And we didn't even see them because they were kind of tucked up in a little cove, and we just kind of floated by without seeing them. But Alaska Rainbow was camped up at the lake, and we passed them. And the head guide, Mike, saw that we pulled up, and he didn't think we were going to leave because we're do-it-yourselfers. We weren't going to get up at the crack of morning and head down. And it was probably like around 7 miles float. He broke down and got his gear raft all packed up and headed out after us to try to beat us to his prime camping spot, which is a really, really nice camping spot. And he was like defeated. He's like, I chased you guys, and he's like, you just didn't stop anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then he's like, he saw us, like we were literally like 100 feet from like his prime camping spot. And that was the first place we had pulled over because we'd started catching fish, and we decided we'd photograph some of these fish. And Mike like went by us and he's like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm going to camp right there." And we're like, "Okay, cool." And he's like, "Why don't you camp on the next sandbar down and you walk up and come talk to us at dinner?" And we did. And that's how my friendship with Mike started. And from there, he came out and he asked if I wanted to come out and guide. He actually thought we were pirate guiding. Chris and I, we thought we were like.
Did you see him throughout the rest of your trip, or was it just that one night?
That's the great thing about the Good News. Like you will like you'll bump into somebody, but usually it's at the beginning of the trip,
and then everybody spans out at their paces.
Everybody spans out, and then you never see anybody.
Yeah.
Which is great. And like the first, I want to say like the first 30 ish miles is in a refuge, and there's no jet boats up there, so no one can come up. Like there is a lodge down at the bottom, the Good News River Lodge. Great bunch of guys. If you're into the lodge experience, look those guys up. But they can only come up so far into the river system. So up top, it's pretty quiet. The only people there's a couple other there's one other guide outfit that does floats down it, and occasional do-it-yourselfer.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How's the jet boats? Do you feel like it ruins the peaceful tranquility or no?
So yes. So the second half of the float is definitely different. Yeah. I like the top half. It's more, I guess you get more of a seclusion type feel because there's nobody around. You don't have the noise of the jet boats, and it's more trouty up top. But I mean, with your not occasional, there's plenty of salmon up there too. But yeah, you get down lower, and it's not like it's jet boat after jet boat, but during the course of a 10-hour float, you'll probably get those guys 1 or 2 times a day.
Right.
And it's not just the lodge guys. That there's the Good News Village, which is a native Yupik tribe. That's their river.
Yeah.
And they come up and they hunt and fish. So you bump into those guys. We've got a pretty good relationship with everybody in the village. So
the first jet boat that you saw must have just seemed a little bit odd, though, after being like, you're so remote, and then all of a sudden you just hear one ripping up the river. You're like, whoa.
And you can hear them for quite a ways too. But up top's a little more tranquil. Yeah. Not saying that down below isn't tranquil, but
man.
Yeah.
But over there though, like what kind of trips are you guys running? And like, what's the time frame, I guess, because, for anybody listening, like what's the time frame that they could do a trip up there?
Yeah. Basically it's like mid-June to like the first week of September is our season.
Yeah.
There's a few, like if you go on Alaska Rainbow Adventures and look at the website, there are like some specialized, just rainbow, like targeting rainbows on like Moraine Creek and stuff like that. Little smaller trip than what we usually do. But you can do those. Then there's like, specifically targeting sockeye, like we call it Sockeye Fest. And
what rivers are they doing that on?
That's the Alagnac, I believe.
Okay.
I think, and man, the return on the sockeye are crazy, but that's not everybody's cup of tea because it's the sockeye aren't aggressive like the coho. They will take a strip fly occasionally, but the main way to catch those is flossing.
Yeah.
And that's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're filling a freezer, that's the way to catch your limit on fish.
Right.
It's
and I'm sure you get the people that show up to Alaska, and there's a lot of people that fish and they think like Alaskan salmon, and they think of that like fire red sockeye salmon.
And that's not where we're at. Like on Sockeye Fest, that's not what we're doing. We're at Sockeye Fest is like fresh. Just entered the system, and you want meat fish type of thing. So that also kind of coincides with the outmigration of the bows. So it's a combination of bigger topwater bows and fill in with the salmon.
And they're together.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, so
you could interest me in that if I could catch some big bows in the mix of it.
That's tough because it's like a lot of it is you're kind of timing it with out migrations of the lake, and you could also have a spring where it's a heavy runoff year, and it's really it's hard for us because we're in rafts, and we don't have we can't like anchor up, and a lot of those prime spots in the Alag Neck, they have, I think it's called the I think they call it like the Meadows or something. It's a bunch of like clumped up islands, and the times that I've done it, and that's where the prime rainbow fishing is supposed to be, it's just so blown out and unsafe for us to be in.
It's too much.
It's too much, and the conditions just didn't permit great fishing through there.
So you guys don't have anchors on your rafts because they're too much weight to fly in.
Yeah, that's the main like one of the main limited factors on our trips is weight. It costs so much to fly all these things up there, and I want to say like a third of everything that people are paying is just going not to us. It's going to our
sitting there and having 35, 40 pound anchors for every boat is like a no.
And we couldn't do that. I mean, we floated around of filling up like bags with river rocks and stuff like that to slow us down, which is a possibility, but
those would have to be very durable though.
Yeah. And so like on the plains, we're like, when you're coming, we want to limit guests to like 250 pounds. So that's your body weight
a piece,
your body weight and plus whatever. It's tough. So like a lot of the big boys will say, okay, you get your weight in 30 pounds of gear. Yeah.
And I still, I'd be over 250.
Yeah. And
do you pair like a little person? Do you say, hey, I don't care if you're that guy's wife, you're flying with him because you weigh 100 pounds.
Well, a lot of, so we're not just like guiding down the river. So a lot of this stuff is behind the scenes. So we have to make up our float plane loads. So we'll be in before the guests arrive and stuff. We'll be out weighing every piece of gear. Like we don't bring water out there because we can't afford the weight. So we make our water out there.
Yeah.
We filter our water and stuff like that. Anything we can do. We've been in the airplane hangar, like saying like, okay, I got to not bring as many shotgun shells because I got to shave 5 pounds off, I'll only bring one pair of underwear this trip. The weight is a huge factor for our trips.
So where you guys are in the hangar, where you guys start your flight, how far of a flight is it for you to get out to where you drop off, say on the Good News when you do
it's about an hour flight. It's about an hour flight. Yeah. And like the flight and then the beavers that's like part of the trip, man.
Yeah.
It's great. If you've never flown in one of those aircraft, we fly in amphibs, which means they can run down the tarmac and land in the water. And I think the last beaver was built in 1967 or something like that, and they're like Cadillacs.
Yeah.
And it's like it's probably one of my favorite things to do, other than fish up there, is fly in one of those babies.
You don't get sick?
Not at all. No. It's weird. I'm way less nervous in the smaller planes than I am in the big planes. And what's funny is like the guides aren't really considered people. And so I get to fly up. I'm kind of considered gear. So the pilots have a little more leeway on altitude they can fly on. So we fly pretty low with the guides.
That's cool.
Than the clients.
That must be cool. You must see some stuff.
Oh, it's awesome. You see brown bears, elk, moose, and everything flying up there, chasing up the river. You can see the salmon in the river.
I can imagine.
As you're going up. And especially when the sockeye are all colored up in red. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So I guess like I'm just thinking of listeners that are listening and might not have any knowledge of like what you can catch up there, and it is so diverse. So I don't know. I think why don't you go into that?
Yes. So my favorite trip, like I, my favorite trip is probably middle of the season on the good news, when like all the salmon have pretty much entered the system. And typically, you'll start out at the lake, and at the lake, you have a possibility of catching just about everything there is at the lake. We have lake trout. Uh, there's whitefish up there, dolly varden, Arctic char, and all your species of salmon you have a possibility of catching them at the lake. And you can
Go through all those, because I think a lot of people don't even know like how diverse of species there is as far like.
well, so there's the Chinook with the kings. Those are the largest of the species. We don't really target those, but you end up catching like a few as bycatch. You need to add to your license if you're specifically targeting kings, which is, I'm not sure if it's an extra $100 or $150 to your fishing license. I'm not sure because we don't target them. But so those things are huge.
Yeah.
Like, they also, you'll catch, we call them like jack kings. They are kings, but they've never like left the system.
Yeah.
And they're like little sneaker fish that they'll come in, they're fully mature so they can fertilize the female's eggs. But you've seen pictures of them. They kind of look like they're brown trout ish.
Yeah.
And they're always male. You like whenever you catch one, he'll undoubtedly make a mess in your boat with his ejaculate. I'll be like, do not bring that in the raft.
Yeah,
don't bring in the raft. But so we get the kings, and then was it even years you get the humpies, but there's always humpies in pinks in the every year you get some sort of return.
Yeah.
There's never none in there. And those, I've seen pictures of those. They get that weird like Quasimodo back.
Yeah, humpback. Humpback is
and they're the smallest.
Yeah,
they're the smallest. And they're okay. And you get the chum, the chum or the dog salmon. Those are the ones kind of like pinkish gray camouflage.
Yeah, they almost have like striations kind of down the sides.
And to tell you what, they get a bad rap, but as for like actual fighting a fish, they're a great fish to have on the reel and play out. They're super aggressive.
I mean, like they look like a fish that came from a Halloween party.
Oh yeah, like they get those gnarly teeth. Yeah, they're kind of vampire like.
Yeah. You're like, this sucker's nasty.
Yeah, and I don't knock. I enjoy catching them. A lot of guys will just break them off, but
I actually, to be honest with you, the coloration of them, I think they look really pretty.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unique patterning that they get down the side, as opposed to just getting pink or just getting kind of dark.
Yep. And the coho, and then of course probably the best, the most fun fishing for is the cohos. You can specifically target the cohos, and they are more than willing to take one of these guys. They just go this super aggressive.
That's got to be a blast, just catching those on streamers and stuff.
Oh, it's so fun. And so you have all those, and what else? I know grayling. I forgot grayling.
Grayling.
And the leopard rainbow. And
do you ever encounter a rainbow trout that you think had a life cycle, that it went out to the ocean at all, or is it always like inshore rainbow trout?
Maybe down close to coastal, like up higher in the system, they're all that leopardy. Every now and then you get one that's a little dull, and I think maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like Southwest Alaska where you have the steelhead.
That's the interesting thing that's always kind of blown my mind, reading about up there and stuff, is it's like, why do you have these river systems that are connected to the ocean that the population just is like, no, we're just domestic. We're just going to kind of stay in this section. And then you have other ones where they have offshore habits, and it's really unbelievable.
Yeah. I have no idea. And like, so you've got the Dolly Varden, they're androgynous. They go in and out of the system.
Yeah.
You know, and as a person from Maine, I like the dollies. I mean,
Yeah, those I can tell that just from talking to you and seeing what is available in the photos and stuff, like, and the style of fishing. I think I would really enjoy fishing for coho with streamers, but I think I would pretty quickly get like dialed in trying to when I could, or if they were available where we were along the river system, going for dollies and grayling and probably rainbow trout. I think I would probably get on the trout pretty hard.
Yeah. So and that's the thing. You can pick your discipline as you go, but whatever you pick, you're gonna see varying like results. Like it's like, okay, I want a mouse for rainbows. Okay, you can do that, and you're gonna have to be dedicated to that. But we're not gonna have a 30, 40 fish day,
right?
You know,
right.
We'll be lucky if we have 10 fish, at least on the rivers that I've guided. But if you dedicate, and that's what you want, good chances are you're going to get a really nice bow. And you're going to catch something.
Yeah.
But the chances are pretty good if you dedicate it. But I mean, don't manage your expectations.
Right.
In Alaska, if you're going for where I fish, the bead is king, and it's king for a reason. I mean, so I think I've talked to you about this before. The dynamics of having so many salmon in the system changes the feeding habits of a fish. It's not like your regular trout stream where you go and you have these lays where a food source will always drift through and come through, and this is where the hatches come off. These fish just forget about bugs.
Yeah,
I mean, they're keyed in on eggs, and where the reds are, where these fish are spawning and mating, they're not in your traditional trout wise, you know. And so where you see this perfect run, and you're casting and casting and casting, you make 30 casts through there, and you're like nothing. Then over here, just like nothing water with a red in it. And behind that red, there's 50 Dolly Varden just sitting there. And you can just like, well, there's a fish, there's a fish, there's a fish. And you catch them on beads. Yeah. Yeah.
But you got to follow the food.
You got to follow the food. It's not saying that you won't pick one up doing that. There's inevitably a rainbow trout in a lie where you think there should be a fish. Sometimes it makes me a liar, and there is, but
so do the rainbows follow typical trout patterns more than like the dolly?
I would say because the rainbows are always in the system,
right?
Where the dollies aren't. The dollies go in and out,
right?
Yeah.
So they're looking, and you probably can catch them on mouse flies and stuff like that because it's a warm season. You've got potential rodents and things entering the river system and crossing and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's see. And you'll catch those on a more naturalistic looking fly or streamer. Like that's why I had Bob do these. Like the black and white Dalai Lama like is a great all around species. Whereas like you'll get a few trout on something like real bright and pinks, oranges and pinks, but they tend to like the trout tend to like more natural colors. But I mean, if you tie that on, you're going for coho, and that'll work. You know, I mean, when you're coho fishing and you tie on pink and that doesn't work, you cut it off and you tie on pink.
Yeah. And
if pink doesn't work, try pink.
Try another shade of pink, a pale pink.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes true though for even like steelhead, like sea run steelhead, like brighter colored pattern stuff as opposed to, your
Yep.
resident bows.
Yep. So typically our trips will start off at the lake, and we do like typical trip is like 7 days, 6 nights.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we're actually living out on the river. We're part of it.
Yeah.
And the whole trip isn't about fishing. It's about enjoying Alaska. We have on the Good News trips, it's mountains from beginning of the trip all the way down to the Good News Bay. It's beautiful. And, I don't know, get all flummoxed here. So like typically we'll spend like at least a day at the lake, especially if all the guests get out on time. And then we'll float about 7 to 8 miles to the first camp. And that's usually a good coho hole where we fish for salmon. And there's also a nice little trib there that you can take up and do a little hike up for grayling. And in the main stem, you can hike up a little bit. There's good dolly varden and stuff there.
Do you guys cook some of the fish that you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are basically catch and release outfit, but we do eat a lot of coho, a lot of salmon, fresh salmon, rainbow trout, and the native rainbow trout we tend to leave in the system.
Yeah.
If somebody wants a dolly varden, that's fine. They're pretty
Prolific.
Yeah, they're pretty prolific, and they come in and out of the system. Grayling, we don't even think about.
Yeah.
Grayling, we're pretty strict with. Like if you're fairly new at fly fishing, we won't even let you handle a grayling.
Yeah.
Just because they're so fragile. No, I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah.
And we are a barbless outfit, and that's not only
awesome.
it's not only for the fish. It's for us guides. We're out there. We're on the water a lot of days and a lot of hours, and there's a lot of hooks flying.
Have you gotten hooked yet?
So yeah, I think it was 2 seasons ago, I got hooked in the head twice. And the biggest one, it wasn't even from a hook. I'm so glad. I always have sunglasses, but it was a piece of split shot. Hit my sunglasses so hard. Like I would have lost an eye.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't had that happen yet.
Yeah.
I've been lucky with smaller hooks. Some of these hooks are big though. I'd want it to be barbless too if I got that buried in there. I've heard horror stories of barbed bass bugs getting stuck in backs and stuff like that. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and we're so far out there that it's like even a small thing could be serious. Like
I mean, say day one you get one of those in your shoulder and then it gets infected.
Yeah. Literally, there's no way off the river except for a helicopter.
Yeah.
Like, especially when we're midway down, there's a few gravel bars that you could get a cub to land on.
Yeah. How long of a distance do they need to land?
I
couple 100 feet?
Yeah.
400 feet?
I forget. I should know this because I had to pace it off because we had a client go out last year, and it was just enough. The pilot didn't like it, but he did it.
Wow. Big paces, overestimate.
Yeah. No, luckily we work with a great bunch of pilots.
So when you are going down, though, just a question that I got is like, so you start at the lake. First of all, what's the distance that you guys are typically floating total in your 7 days?
It's right around 50 miles, 54-ish river miles.
Okay, so in that 50 miles that you guys are doing, excuse me, Is it consistent roughly year to year as to like where fish are? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
okay, it is.
Yep. And it's really weird. They almost 100%. They don't venture out of the main stem. So there's a lot of little offshoots.
Yep.
And I've when water permits, I will take one of these things just to
See what's there.
just to see what's there. And it's desolate.
Really?
It's so weird. It's like I take these little things and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be cool. And it's a very, very cool float.
Yeah.
It's just sucky for fish.
Really?
Yeah. I think they just stay in the main stem because they want the shortest run up to the lake. And then from the lake they go up a little bit further and into some other smaller tribs.
Maybe they can sense where the like majority of the mass flow is.
I think it is very. I think they're very flow sensitive, and they're like they just know the main stem. Yeah, I've been so surprised, and it's like these. I've taken these things. They're about a raft and a half wide, and they're twisty and turny, and like, oh, this looks so trouty. And like, maybe when the salmon aren't in the system, like they fill up with like regular like trout and stuff.
Yeah,
but
it's funny though because that's so different than like what we see out to New York. Because it's like you go out to New York and mostly kings, but like the kings will be in nothing.
Yeah, and I think they're just. These little slide channels had nothing to do with their original imprint of where they came from.
Yeah,
and they want the quickest way. And maybe they can smell the waters. I don't know. But they're looking to get.
Yeah, I mean they're a completely different beast out there.
It's so weird, and it's like. I know it's really frustrating to a lot of guests like that come out and they're like, there should be a fish there. Why isn't there fish there? And I'm like, well, the food source isn't there. It's over here.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, for anybody that's never fished that style where you're fishing with eggs, it is definitely a different thing. I mean, I've had that experience just out to New York, which is not the same at all what he's doing, but in Alaska, but it's weird when you start thinking about fishing behind the fish that are dropping eggs to catch fish.
Yeah. And
it's just different than like what we do here. You know, we're imitating bugs and bait and all different kinds of stuff. And then you get there and it's a different mindset.
Yep. And there are times a year where like up at the lake, we can actually, we fish dries up at the lake. There'll be a little caddis hatch going off and you catch some of the smaller bows that didn't leave on the out migration and stuff like that.
Have you ever seen hatches on the river when you're out there?
Not prolific hatches, but I've seen a few mayflies and a few caddis. A little more caddis than I have.
Is anything ever? Do you ever see any small trout along there rising? No, they're all on eggs at that point. Even the little guys are probably like, take a small trout and he's like, look.
I see grayling sipping a lot, but I've never like actually seen anything come off.
Yeah.
And grayling are weird. It's like if I had an orange bobber and could put a hook on an orange bobber, you'd catch grayling all the time.
Yeah.
They love orange for some reason.
Huh.
And we have a pretty nice size class on the Good News when it comes to grayling.
What's your range?
You catch 18-inch grayling wouldn't be out of the picture.
Wow.
You know, it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if you got bigger than that.
Yeah.
And typically they're not that big. So
they're an amazing fish. They're definitely on my bucket list to catch. It's kind of like cutthroat last year going out to Wyoming is one of those things that like I've always wanted to catch one and we don't have them here in Maine. And I've just always seen pictures of their throats and just the variations in their spots of where you catch them. I'm like, I really want to catch one. And grayling are definitely up there as far as, the first time that I saw them and I'm like, and how is this even in the same, like, how is this a salmonid species? It's like, it's got a sailboat sail on top of its back. It's just a wild fish.
Yeah. That fin is incredible. Like you get a certain time of day and you hook one of those things and they kind of do like figure eights and swirls before you net them. And if they have that pectoral fin extended while they're doing that, oh my God, it's so pretty. If the sunlight hits it, it's like little sparks and blues and pinks underneath, purples underwater.
I've seen some photos, and it's always captivated me from like a painting standpoint, because it's kind of almost amazing. Reminds me of like
the colors just in that one fin.
Which that's like that reflective iridescence. It's almost like the cheeks on a landlock when we see that they're pretty. You get the teals and the blues and the purples and all that, but the thing with them is it's everything about them.
Yeah.
You know, you'll just see a picture and the whole fish is just kind of emitting this like electric kind of color, and I mean, I would love to catch one of those. That would be high on my list.
Yeah, there was this little trib that came off, and one of my clients, we're a leave no trace type of thing, and he casted and he hooked the far shore, and he couldn't get it undone. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go around and just pull it out of the bushes, because I don't even want to leave a hook.
Yeah.
And so when I went around, I was unhooking it. I was on this little cut bank, and I could look down. And there was this monster grayling in between these two humps of, I think it was two logs, sunken logs. And I told the guy, I said, listen, you want to cast about 2 feet in front of me, right in the middle of the river. And he did it. And he wasn't that good, but he nailed this. He nailed it right on the first cast. And I was like amazed. And it was just enough time that it let his bead it dropped in between them, and wham, he got it. And I was so stoked. Yeah. And I'm like, I like literally ran across the water to net this fin. And I was shaking, like this grayling was so big. It was 24-inch fish. It was the biggest one I had seen up to date.
Man.
He had no idea what he caught.
Yeah.
He's like, is that good? I'm like,
yeah.
Dude, that's fucking, that's awesome. Dude. Yeah. I was like, I was way like, I was 1,000 times more excited than that guy was. And I was like, oh, I wish I caught it.
Yeah. That's big.
Oh, it was a monster fish. And it was a very, very small offshoot trib.
Yeah. So that made it even cooler.
Yeah.
Do they give up? How you said they do figure eights, but like, are they kind of like, do they have a run and then they kind of tire out, or are they pretty resilient?
No, I mean, they'll fight you pretty good. And then kind of like a brook trout, they'll come alive right before you net them.
Oh yeah.
You know, but they're okay. They're not turds.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Brook trout.
Yeah. They're not like,
Yeah. I love brook trout, but yeah, that's their MO is you can reel me in, and then you net them and they're like, I'm gonna beat the living snot out of myself in here.
The Dolly Vardens are like brook trout, but you get them in the net and they'll death roll in the net, and like you'll have this beautiful pristine fish. And then he'll mar himself all up in your line, just like rolling. And
it's got to be a char thing.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
And, they have that very smooth.
Smooth.
Char skin.
Yeah. And very.
And their slime is very, sensitive also.
So you guys must have to try to keep them pretty wet.
Keep them in the net mostly.
Yeah.
What's great about like the barbless, so you mainly catch those pegging a bead.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the guys too. I'm like, pegging a bead, that doesn't sound very, it sounds like flossing fish, but I don't know. Like I've come around, because out of the thousands of fish that we've caught on beads, every one of them is hooked on the outside corner. Yeah. Every one of them. Yeah. I've never seen one of these fish like inhale a hook.
Yeah.
And we've never killed a fish because it swallowed a hook. They're out there. It's always right here, outside of the cheek. And what's great about it is like, sometimes you don't like, are like, are you okay with not netting this fish? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, we'll just give it a little shake and it'll usually pops right off.
Yeah.
So
it is funny, that culture of like pegging beads, and it's not a fly, and it's not a fly.
No, it's not a fly.
It's not a fly, but I know the first time I went to New York, I was out there and I ended up fishing the Sandy, and there was a guy that lived in Alaska that was out visiting a friend, and he was like kind of blown away because he was talking to me. He's like, so you don't peg beads? And I'm like, no, I use a egg fly. And he's like, I didn't know that this was like a big thing down here. He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, why? Like, what's like, everybody's saying that I'm snagging fish, pegging a bead. And he's like, I don't get any deep hook sets in the throat or anything. He goes, just what you said. He's like, they take the bead and the hook just comes from the side, and I get him in the corner of the mouth, but on the outside corner
On the
of
outside
mouth.
rather than inside.
Yeah. And he's like, he's like, I've never had, like he said, I've never had an injury where I hook them in the eye or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
If we hooked the amount of fish on a traditional egg pattern that we do on beads, the mortality rate would be huge. There would be so many of these fish just swallowing these things because like, I've never seen a more aggressive fish than the Dolly Varden after an egg. They just go crazy, and they do. And like when you have one hooked, and so that hook is in there, and the bead is still off to the side. There's other Dolly Varden going up to that fish and like smacking its cheek, trying to get that bead that's right there. And like you can just imagine like these fish just inhaling these egg patterns and just
I can. I mean, it's a smorgasbord out there too.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it's not like they're chasing something. You got a pretty passive presentation where they got time to suck it in as well.
I was guiding this one gentleman and his wife, and he tied his own flies, and he was a very, very, very good Euro nympher. Yeah. And he's had all these egg patterns, and he's like, will these work? And I'm like, yeah, they will work. I said, they won't work as good as that bead. And I said, I'm kind of worried about your hook set, but he was very good. This guy was very good. And like, he had all his hook sets were right in the corner. He didn't have any fish inhale stuff, and he was catching fish. But this young lady behind us in the boat behind us, like every like minute, you know, fish. And, his wife started giving him crap. She's like, she's like, he's like, well, what are they using, John? And I said, it's that same bead setup that I showed you. Yeah. I said, I literally gave her the same thing I gave you, but you wouldn't tie on, and had a bobber on it. Yeah. He's like, we can't tell any of my friends that I ever use a bobber. And finally, his wife gave him so much crap, he switched over, and
she probably gave him crap because she was probably used to him back home being the greatest fisherman that ever was.
They were great clients, and she was a riot. She didn't fish the whole time, and one camp, all she did was like just run back and forth netting fish for people. She got to work. She was having a blast.
That's cool. So fun. That's cool that she went though. Yeah. That's a good thing that you mentioned that actually, because it's like, I mean, the experience of going is like worth it.
Oh, it would totally be worth it if you just brought a camera, and just sat in the front of the boat or in the back of the boat taking pictures of stuff. I mean,
I can only imagine up there. Yeah. I tell people like going out here, like there's a spot in the back of the boat. You don't have to fish. Yeah. Like it's just a beautiful thing to be out. I can't even imagine up there.
Gorgeous. I mean, and you have all these opportunities to see all these birds. You see owls, eagles, like just about every bird of prey up there, and brown bears. I mean, it's not when, and it's not if, but when you're going to see a brown bear.
You see moose much?
We had one go through camp, and it was like
crash.
Oh, it was terrifying. The noise it made going through camp was horrible. Yeah. But I've seen them on the plains. I'm trying to think if I've actually
seen one in the river.
I've seen them on the ridge and stuff, but not up close. Yeah. Elk. I've seen elk. That's always nice to see elk.
I love elk.
Wolves. Seen some wolves up on the bluffs and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you name it, it's up there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I gotta go. I'm sitting here, and John's just making me fall in love with it.
Yeah, and so what, like for gear up there, I'd say a 6 and an 8 weight is what you should probably have. 8-weight's fine. Handle the coho, and if by chance you hook a big king, you can fight that for a day and a half on your 8-weight. The 6-weight is great for all the trout that we have, and
boy, that must be an experience if you hook into a coho. I mean, if you were fishing for trout with a 6-weight and you get into a does that ever happen? Or
you bycatch like a chum or something on 6-weight.
That must be an experience.
It's fun. I mean, you get tired out. I mean, it's just nothing you want to do over and over, but you can do it. You can do it. And on the 6-weight, all you need is the floating line.
Yeah.
Your 8-weight, I would bring in intermediate, a floater, and
well, actually, that's a good question. Now that you say that, it just made me think. Another question that people might want to know is like, I mean, what's your average? What's the average depth of the river? Like, what does the river look like? So you leave the lake, you got 50 miles to go. Is it rocky? Is it gravelly? Is it riffle and pool, or is it primarily like just kind of a consistent depth glide? Or I mean, what is it?
It's rocky, gravelly, but I mean, you're floating 54 miles, so it's kind of hard to generalize it because it changes.
Yeah.
I mean, it has plunge pools, and it narrows up and then it widens down.
So it has really shallow sections.
Oh yeah.
And deep sections.
Predominantly I'd say it's probably between, 3 and 5 feet. It's not
a good fishable depth.
Yeah, it's like if you have to, like if there was access to that thing would be great to wade the whole thing. It'd be a great waders river. And you do get, I mean, there's spots we're not floating. I mean, some days we have to really make up time. Right. Some days we're floating 20 miles is not an unheard of day because we just have to make up time. We'll stop and let you out and fish some good coho runs but I mean, you can wade out. There's a lot of places where like we'll camp and you just wade upriver for I don't know, half a mile. Yeah.
And like what's the like if your flows are like your typical kind of stable flows for that time of year, I mean, what's the water like? I mean, how's your clarity? Is it like tannin stained? Is it crystal clear?
It's clear.
Okay.
It's clear. Until like if there's a lot of flesh.
Yeah. It can get a little murky.
It can get a little murky down in the lower.
Yeah.
A little lower, like 15 miles.
So a lot of like when you're out there, your clients are able to actually sight and see fish. Yeah, mostly before they target them.
Yes, so that's mainly when I'm rowing. I'm looking for reds. I'm looking for salmon on the side, just chilling, and I'm like, cast right through there, drift through there, and and that's how we catch our trout.
Yeah,
and then when we're targeting like coho or something, I'll look for soft seams right out of the main flow of the river, even frog water. Beaver sloughs are great. And they take a break. They're swimming up and they just pull out of the main stem of and then they just like they chill.
It's so funny. It just like you see them and you're just like, this is not a fish that would want to take it easy.
Yeah, and like I would have never thought that, but that's where they are. you know?
I mean, it's smart, but it's funny.
What's pretty cool is like we had a guide pull over into a beaver slough about 20 miles below the lake, and there was this French client, and he was so bummed out he didn't catch a lake trout up at the lake, and I'm like, that's it, you're not going to get one. He caught one about 20 miles from the lake in a beaver slough. And they pulled into another beaver slough and he caught another one. So he caught a lake trout 20 miles below the lake. And I told him, I said, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I said, it's not going to happen. And he was so bummed out. Then he was like, he was like yelling at me down the river.
Oh man,
We had rainbows and radios, and like
he was pumped to let you know.
He was telling me, and I'm like, "You're full of crap.
Yeah, you don't
just-"
know.
And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah, you said it, so it you said it.
And he was so that client, those clients were really good. He's one of the guys that dedicated himself to a mouse on the first day.
Yeah.
And he got some really nice rainbows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, if you do it, I mean, obviously if I went out, I think, I mean, I would want to catch trout. I think I would try to catch everything that was available to catch it first, but then I probably would key in on trout for sure.
Yeah. You'd have an advantage with me there because I'd tell you, this is what we should try here.
Yeah.
And we can slow our roll a little
bit. Man, I don't know. You do have me thinking about lake trout though. We ought to try to catch some lake trout here we could pull the skiff around in one area that I know looking for them. Yeah. But so Alaska Rainbow Adventures though is where you want to go. We'll have that link in the description. And can people request you as their guide, or how does that go?
Yeah, you could ask what trips I'm on and stuff like that.
For an extra.
Yeah. Well, I know like there's a few gentlemen that booked the last Good News trip and they wanted to make sure that I was on that trip.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate it. I really do. And those are the type of clients that, I really enjoy fishing with because they become more friends than clients.
And they know what to expect.
And they know what to expect. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. It always is good if everybody knows that and expectations are, realistic.
Yeah. These trips aren't for the faint of heart either, because we're out there in the wild, in nature, and we get weather. I mean, there's days where like we can't make a mile, and we're just gonna have to hold up in the camp and
make up time later.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. We have a great group of people that rent here at the yurts, but I mean, there's times where, that's too much for them. So I can imagine every once in a while you guys probably get somebody that gets in a little over their head and they thought that they were going to have a 5-star hotel experience on their trip.
And that's like, know ahead of time what you're getting into. Don't feel afraid to ask questions. We had a gentleman bail out because 3 days was enough for him, and his son actually came out with him, and he was like, "Yeah, Dad's thinking about leaving." And I talked to him, and I'm like, "Listen, man." He was really out of his element. Like he had never been off of road system. He hadn't fly fished before.
Had he never slept in a tent?
No.
Okay.
He was a city boy, wicked nice guy. His name was Bobby, and he was with me the first couple of days, and I started talking to him. I said, "Listen, just because your dad leaves, like we can move you into the guide tent. You can get the real experience of what it's like." And I'm like, "Listen, we'll take you under a wing, and like if you wanna, if you think this experience is for you and to help you grow." And he did. He stayed. I think he had the time of his life, man.
Yeah.
I think it really changed him. Like he's emailed me a few times and like texted me a few times, and I'm like, it was great. And I'm like, and he was new to fly fishing too. And I said, you should stay with it, keep it up. It'll change your life.
Yeah.
It'll make you a better person. So
I'm scared to go up there, John. I'm scared. I might just go up there and say the hell with everything that I'm doing back here and just turn into just a Alaska bum.
Well, that's a full story. Like in the beginning, when Bob said he had enough pictures of big fish, and like at that time, I couldn't fathom what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And you go out there and like, your first trip is one thing. Your first trip is like fish. Then your third, you're like, "Oh man, this place is beautiful." And I'm like, I feel so relaxed.
Yeah.
and caught a fish. That's nice. And then it's translated to when I come back here. When you and I go on fishing trips, we go out to New York or whatever.
It's not for the experience of the river.
It's not.
Yeah.
But I'll catch that one fish.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm good. And you're still out there.
Oh man,
you're still out there. Fish.
I probably would be that way up there too, though.
And you know, and I get it, but I'm like, well, that's enough now.
Yeah.
I can be content in that one fish.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll get there someday.
I don't know. You might just see a crazy person up there in Alaska. I might not sleep.
Chris couldn't believe the first. I mean, I was fishing a good 17 hours a day. I was up before everybody. I went to sleep after everybody.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it.
There's fish.
There's
fish.
You put the thing in the water and you catch. There's a fish at the end of it. But
I hope I relax a little bit when it comes to that down the road. I am more relaxed than I used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. When we go out to New York, I think Alaska's changed you a lot though. When we go out to New York, because like when we go out to New York, like you used to be more discouraged.
I used to be so frustrated.
Yeah, and because we went to New York before you kind of did the Alaska thing, and like there was a level of frustration.
Yep.
But now, like when you go out, we usually are going out as a group.
Yep.
And you're really going out to spend time on the river with friends and have a good time and enjoy yourself.
Yep.
And you do an awesome time at doing that. Like, I mean, we could have a really poor outing as far as fish, and you would be the same way that you were if we did great.
I have fun. Yeah. It's just an experience with me now. And Bentley started going with this. I think the week we're filming this, I think the episode with Bentley is going to drop.
Yep. Yeah.
And I've had so much fun fishing with Bentley and seeing his game change.
It is. It's fun. He's such a good listener too. Like his learning curve was so fast.
It's amazing. I've never seen anybody tie a blood knot. Like he's like, how do you tie this on? And I said, I tie a blood knot. I go like this. I got my spectacles on. I'm tying it right down there. And he's like, oh, and he ties it right. We're right on the river.
Yeah.
And he ties it and he gets it done. And I said, well, this would be a good spot for you to try tight lining. Because he was only doing indicator. Yep. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he tries tight, bam, steelhead.
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess he's got that.
Yeah. Yeah, he really does a good job of digesting the information that you give him. And I think his embroidery and working with like jammed up bobbins and needles and things like that. I don't know. I think it helps him tie stuff. So, but no, it's been great going out there and I like it, but I can only imagine how much more spectacular Alaska is. And all I can tell you is, I love my time on the river with John. And, I mean, we have a lot of great time and I know that you guys would up there and I've heard so many stories and it sounds like an epic place to go, and I would definitely hit up Alaska Rainbow Adventures. We'll have a link for them in the description, plus Bob's flies where you guys can get those. And we'll be back with another episode later. But thanks for sharing all of that.
Thanks for letting me.
Yeah,
it's changed my life.
Yeah. I can tell. I can tell. All right. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks, guys.